Two late-night hosts causing reactions on social media this week after things they said in their opening monologues. First, check out this heartfelt moment from Jimmy Kimmel that seemed to then turn to a political undertone.
They did an echocardiogram, which is a sonogram of the heart, and found that Billy was born with a heart disease. And I want to say one other thing. President Trump last month proposed a $6 billion cut in funding to the National Institute of Health, which is so unbelievably sad to me. We were brought up to believe that we live in the greatest country in the world, but until a few years ago, millions and millions of us had no access to health insurance at all. You know, before 2014, if you were born with congenital heart disease like my son was, there was a good chance you'd never be able to get health insurance because you had a pre-existing condition. You were born with a pre-existing condition. And if your parents didn't have medical insurance, you might not live long enough to even get denied because of a pre-existing condition. If your baby is going to die, and it doesn't have to, it shouldn't matter how much money you make. I think that's something that, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or something else, we all agree on that, right? I mean, we do.
Joining us now with her reaction, political analyst Scottie Hughes. Scottie, good to see you. Scottie, is anything he said true? Because, you know, if someone was born with a congenital heart problem, two of my children actually were, and no child ever went untreated because Obamacare hadn't passed yet, did they?
Absolutely not. In fact, I think it was under the age of 8 or age of 10. There was no such thing as a pre-existing condition before that stage. You're right. And what's very sad in this is Jimmy Kimmel, actually, my heart breaks for what his family went through. I think every parent, anybody can sympathize with that. But to turn this in to fear-mongering and to use this platform, it actually is against all of us that are dealing with children that have health conditions. When he fear-mongers like that and makes it a political statement that he did, it's infuriating because it's spreading false, it's spreading untruths. And I have to wonder, where were the fact checkers on that story right there? Where were those other folks that we heard all throughout the campaign saying that Donald Trump wasn't telling the truth? And for Jimmy Kimmel's record, the National Institute of Health has nothing to do with insurance or whether or not a patient gets provided for or not. So he might need to go back and research before he slews such lies and defamatory remarks about our president.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, like to get some facts straight. And it's not like he doesn't. I mean, you and I have done enough work with network news and even, actually, you went to Comedy Central with me, I remember, once upon a time. And we know they have teams of writers and researchers. Do we not know that? Who could have bothered to check out whether the National Institute of Health has anything to do with insurance, whether any of the facts that Jimmy Kimmel is getting ready to say to his live audience, or even the next night, right? When you know they were alerted via social media by people like you and I and those who always let people know when they're wrong. But they apparently just don't care because this has just gone totally unchecked.
So are they stupid? Or are they really smart and purposely spreading propaganda? I think that's the question the American public is asking ourselves right now. And this week has been a great example of it. I think our next story that we're going to cover is another basically slander. Hollywood has gotten beyond, it's like the stages of grief have now gone into pure actual anger management lying. It's like the 8th stage of grief that they're in. Because if you're in Hollywood, there is a good chance that you are doing everything you can to lie and demonize a conservative on the right. Great case in point. You know, this past weekend you had Samantha Bee, who I'm personally now at war with, because she sat there and she was talking about she did this whole fundraiser to protect journalists and then went on air and attacked journalists just because we did not agree with her opinion. I don't know who Hollywood thinks there is, but Gina, I have to ask you and your audience, stop supporting them. That's the only way that we get them to listen. And this past weekend we saw it with probably one of the biggest liberal stories that came out. I think it was called The Circle, and it had Tom Hanks in it, and it bombed. So way to go, conservatives out there. Let's actually send a message to Hollywood that this cannot continue.
And I think that in some ways, I think we are, but I think we can be more consistent about that. God knows they are. You know, Mel Gibson or anyone who's ever had a conservative vein for a moment makes a movie and they don't support it, but the movies still do really well anyway because conservative movies are often much more substantive. But anyway, new topic, and you mentioned this. I want to go over to CBS's late night host. Let's take a look at why people are calling Stephen Colbert, calling for him to be fired, actually. Here you go.
Mr. Trump, your presidency, I love your presidency. I call it disgrace the nation. You're the bloatus. You're the glutton with the button. You're a regular Gorge Washington. You're the presidents, but you're turning into a real pricktator. Sir, you attract more skinheads than free Rogaine. You have more people marching against you than cancer. You talk like a sign language gorilla who got hit in the head. In fact, the only thing your mouth is good for is being Vladimir Putin's holster.
Too far, Scottie?
Yes, but that was too far after even the first line, much less the last line right there. Could you imagine, Dr. Gina, if you would have had a Republican or a conservative say that about President Obama? Oh my gosh, not only would they have been probably fired almost immediately, actually they probably would have been yanked off air as it was going on. They would have been fired, but there would have been a public outcry for that entire channel to be boycotted. I do not understand. And we're in a time when you're seeing our friend Jesse Waters, he was pulled off, well, he went on vacation. When you're seeing all of these conservatives, Bill O'Reilly, for whatever happened, the actions that happened, I get it, deal with it. But yet you allowed this double standard of slander to go on air and insult our current president, the office he holds, and the millions of people who voted for him. This was not a smart move on Stephen Colbert, but of course, it's up to that network whether or not they're going to allow it to continue.
So have you heard anything? Do you think there's a chance he'll really be fired? Because it seems to me like Democrats do this and there is never, ever any action taken against them where like you mentioned, you know, someone makes an offhand comment and they're, you know, like either fired or sued or, you know, in some sort of trouble at every turn. But it never seems to work that way for the left. And if it does, like we know there are lawsuits against networks out there that are never reported. No one reports them. Conservatives are even too nice to report them.
Well, there's about as much of a chance of Stephen Colbert being held accountable for those words as there is for you going out and buying a pair of flats. And we both know that's not going to happen.
Someone bring me the shoes that I bought shoes this weekend that are flats, and you have to see them. I wore them to work, and someone's going to bring them to me, and I'm going to show you them to you before the show's over. But I want to ask you, though, because this really does seem to be a thing now where the left is trying to systematically take away free speech, all the while calling us the fascists. Your comment.
And the bigots and the hate. This is the double standard, Dr. Gina, and this is what makes me so angry. Because they're doing this because they want to delegitimize your voice, my voice, those of us that speak from a conservative perspective. And it's all because they disagree with our opinion. So if we actually just, for some reason, decided to be dumb and go along with what they're saying, we would be just absolutely loved. We would probably have statues built to us. We would be definitely speaking at several commencement exercises in a few weeks as people graduate, because that's where liberals are going to speak to these universities, but yet their whole goal is to take us off air, to take our voices. And if they can't take us off air, then they're going to make sure people don't have any trust or respect to us, and they're going to take everything we say, anything we do, and twist it to fit into their agenda. Dr. Gina, it's very scary. Talk about First Amendment rights. They are under attack right now, but it's your and I's, not necessarily Hollywood.
I have to show you these because we're almost out of time. Scottie Hughes, thanks for being with us.